Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. Really appreciate your time this afternoon. I'll let you introduce yourself and take it away. We've got a captive audience here, so yeah, over to you.
All right, cool. Thanks for that. So I have tried to squeeze in as many football puns as I felt comfortable with into this one. So we're going from kickoff to career. Kickoff was a great game back in the day as well. And this is basically scoring a job in the game's history, and I'm sure the puns will continue throughout. I can't remember how many I've put in, but I might start to sigh at all of them as we go through. But that's a bunch of us. This is the Sports Interactive slide deck, and I'll now introduce myself, me. So I'm a bit of an overconfident Australian who's always approached things with a bit of a how hard can it be attitude. So my current role at SI covers managing and onboarding the progression of managing onboarding and progression of our software engineers. I look at keeping the engineers we have, developing their talents, as well as bringing new talent into the studio. That's a Photoshop picture of me as well that my wife hates. That did hang up in the past. I was a games programming lecturer, and that hung up in the halls at NHTV for round about a year, a bit longer, and no one said anything about it. Everyone just assumed I looked like that, or close enough. Um, and yeah, I'm here at Sports Interactive now. I've got developers that have been here since day one. That's not just the Collier brothers who founded the company, although they're still around. I've got around about 20 to 25% of the team that have been here for more than 10 years. And I look at maintaining our engineering practice. So that's improving the coding standards that we sort of adhere to, getting all of us on the team to work as best we can, and to deliver the best version of Football Manager annually as well. There's a joke there. I'll keep going with that one. Um, so this is Football Manager. I don't know how many of you are sort of aware of us. We've been around for quite some time now, a number of releases, almost too many, I'd say, to fit into a screen at one time. They're kind of getting a bit small. Once we release another one, I'm going to have to readjust this screen again. But yeah, it's a football management simulation, annually released, and it lets you take charge of more than 2,500 clubs across 51 nations. We ship on all major platforms, so you can manage your team anywhere. And we have the largest and most accurate player and staff database in the world, which is a pretty interesting thing when you simulate real life. It began as a bedroom developed game in the late 80s. Championship Manager first released in September of 92. Then the company Sports Interactive was founded in 94, so it's good to release a game before you're a company. Then we split with our original publisher to start working with Sega in 2003. And yeah, Sports Interactive was is part of the Sega umbrella of companies since 2006. So we're a Sega studio. Yeah, we've got a multi-award-winning series with a loyal, passionate fan base. We've got over 25 years of experience developing 85% plus rated games, and it's generally a really fun and interesting place to work. But this topic is about interviews. And I thought I'd just start by asking, the audience, what is a job interview in your sort of opinions, if anyone wants to put into the chat, etc. Oh, okay. So we've got one. It's a serious conversation about if you can get the job. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, it's that's one thing. Yeah. Or suitable for the job. Yeah. The conversation to try and find out the employee and employer are, yep, cool. Getting to know each other, assessing your skills. Right. These are all good answers. Way to find out if you're a good fit for the team. Ooh, Maximo, a holistic review. That's great. I always like when, words like holistic pop up in places, how you can fit in the company. Cool. All right. About both parties finding out. Oh, nice. There's a couple of good answers here with, it's a two-way conversation. Um, Really good to see that because sometimes interviews come across as or are interpreted as being very one-sided. Of it's, where you sit there, people ask you questions and then tell you if you're any good or not. So that's really cool. Yeah. And this is the sort of purpose a job interview does serve. It's to, you've already got the qualification or portfolio of work. Why is there, an interview, etc.? Or the question is usually, why am I doing a test? Um, but yeah, it's this two-way conversation to see if your views align with the company. So yeah, it's a conversation. Um, don't treat an interview as a test, right? You've probably done tests already as well before you got to the interview stage. So this shows that you've made it through the testing process. And as was mentioned in the chat, interviews aren't one-sided. It's more of a match with both sides evaluating fit. So there's a bit of back and forth to an interview. Um, Now, if it's your first job, you might be a little bit, blinded by the lights of the studio, etc. But you don't want to get off to the wrong start. You need to be taking in as much detail about the position and the studio as you can from the interview process, because this is the first point in the job application process where you get to ask questions. Yeah. So make sure you take advantage of that. You've probably done tests before this. You've had questions asked of you already, and the interviewers probably have more questions for you. But remember, this is your first opportunity to ask questions. And also remember that if you are offered a job, you're the one that has to accept the offer as well. Okay. So that's all part of the interview. And another thing is everyone wants an interview to go well. No one's trying to trip you up in an interview. Interviewers generally want the interview to go well, and we want every interview to be the one. Yeah. Because basically, if the interview is the one, then great, we've done our job, and we can now go back to doing that thing that we love, which is creating awesome games, right? So everyone approaches an interview with the attitude of, oh, I hope this goes really well. Not just yourselves being interviewed, but also the interviewers that are involved with that will approach it with that. So always take that to heart when you're, because going into an interview is a very nerve-wracking, it's a strange process. It can make you quite nervous, but always understand that everybody's kind of on your side. We want this to go as well as it possibly can. There are different genres of interview, okay? So you may be experiencing one or all or some of these at different times. We've got screening calls. They're not usually carried out by technical staff or developers on the shop floor, as we'll call it. They're usually carried out by maybe HR and non-technical team members. It typically means like a screening call is that your portfolio and CV were of interest and they're just looking for a little bit of additional information. Maybe they need to clarify something that was in there. I've done this myself with sometimes we'll advertise for year-long internships for people on a sandwich year. And I just need to be doubly sure because sometimes it's not clear if they're still studying or if they finished studying because we generally can't have people that have graduated on the internship program that we've got because part of it is that you still need to be studying. So it's typically a call like that just to verify and make sure those things are okay. So it's a bit of information. Those typically screening calls are a little bit above junior or a graduate as well. It's a sounding out of salary expectations to see if everyone's on the same page with things like that. Then you might get technical tasks. So this can be a test delivered via a call with some kind of short time frame. Some studios do time tests where they start a call, give you a time test, and then we'll come back to it later. Others have these longer take-home tests or take-home tasks. And you might get a technical interview, which is a walkthrough of an already completed test or a walkthrough of an already completed task, asking you questions about how you went through that. Or it can be some short technical challenge to carry out live. Interview panels carried out with multiple divisions of the studio. And again, these ones are usually for roles above graduate entry level positions, where there's a bit more risk involved for the studio to fill the role with the right candidate. Then we've got like the formats of these tests. So technical tests, they can be whiteboard challenges or a series of, hypotheticals. I had one I used to run as an icebreaker sort of a question, which is always quite fun. It was, what could you make with a cup? Right? So say you've turned up and you're given a cup. What can you do with it? And this is one of those things that is just around, and please put something in the chat if you want to, but this is one of those sort of questions that's a bit of an icebreaker and it's around just generating ideas and sometimes having a bit of fun with it. occasionally I've been shocked by the answers that I've seen. It used to be a brick of what could you do with a brick, but that tends to go very, yeah, 20 uses for a brick. Yeah, that tends to go down a destructive path that I didn't enjoy because usually it's like I could smash stuff, I could break stuff, and it's like it gets very quick. I did have someone like I could make a handbag with it, and I was kind of like, that's interesting and heavy, and yeah. And then they were like, and then I could use it as a weapon. I was like, oh, okay, we got to the destructive part in the end. The cup tends to be quite interesting. With response to what you could do, tie a piece of string with it, and find another cup, and then have a walkie-talkie or something. An interesting one was someone that answered in this order of you could pee in a cup and drink from a cup, and I was like, that's not the order I would have gone with, but yep, that's there. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Brilliant. Yeah. So there's those sort of questions that might pop up that are a bit of an icebreaker and a challenge, and just trying to maybe ease some of the nerves you might have going into an interview. In all interviews, there will be some CV and portfolio, maybe a walkthrough of those, a look at how you might fit into the team and how you might integrate with the studio culture and values. So every studio out there will have some sort of studio culture or studio values. We have ours on our website, and it looks like this. So we have, 6 core values, and a studio is really going to seek folk that embody those values. So a bit of reading up on company culture before an interview helps. Also, before writing a cover letter, it helps too. So if you can incorporate some of the language from studio values or company culture into your cover letter, that's going to help you actually get a little bit noticed as well. Although I would stress, like, don't force it. Cover letters and things like that should have like a natural flow to them. It's very obvious when um, you're really heavily incorporating company values or company culture into a cover letter, and it does. Yeah, it never reads well. It's one of those ones where I'm like, it's like trying too hard. Um, but as we've got keep collaborating, so we want collaboration across the board and across all internal teams. So, that's not just, design collaborating with art, collaborating with engineering team. It's, collaboration with marketing, with IT, everything. We're one part of one big team. Be flexible. So innovation is valuable. We need to keep up with the changes of the world as football, as well as with the world of technology. So we need to have that flexibility to adapt for new platforms or to alter the way our competitions run for different things. Like there's an additional number of players or an additional team in a particular standings this year. We've also got, stay tenacious. So don't settle, seek improvement, and have drive, which leads into show ambition, which is demonstrate your driving improvement in yourself. We're always looking for, people to join us that are also, not willing to settle and sort of say this is as good as I'll get. Everyone can improve and get better. Bring the passion. So, enjoy what you do and bring that enjoyment to our players and to the rest of us in the studio as well. And consider the bigger picture as well. We aim to have a positive impact on the world. So we look for, things like work-life balance with our team members. Um, what hot topics are there around the day, the news and things that happen, because that does impact us as creators of a game that simulates the real world. Things happen in the real world and we have to adjust and adapt. So, famously in 2020, COVID happened. And when we were making FM, we had to kind of figure out, what do we do? Do we acknowledge this thing's happening? Do we not acknowledge it because we'll keep it as a fantasy, like the world of football just keeps carrying on because there were matches skipped, things changed, crowds, attendance was down, etc. All that sort of stuff came into it. So it's an interesting position to be in, working on a game that involves the real world. And yeah, we have, what matters in focus as well. So there's Sports Interactive's company values. Back to more of the interview stuff, you'll get these common interview questions. So you can expect at least one of these questions to crop up in an interview. It's always the what makes you want to work with us, or give us a summary of the projects you've worked on. Do you have, this is from an engineering point of view, do you have source control experience? But that also accounts for everything else as well. What about working in a cross-discipline team? or particular projects you've enjoyed and why. What are you most proud of? Can you walk us through these projects? What motivates you? What are your career goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, etc.? For us, are you a football fan? Do you support a particular team? That's not a trap either. We're happy to discuss every single team. I do think we've got quite a few Arsenal supporters on the team across the studio, but one more certainly won't hurt. Um, well, we recently had a spate of interns that have all been Man United fans as well, which is interesting. But there's just been a lot of them. They all sit together as well, so there's a lot of like Man United shirts in the office at one point. But I can get over that. What area of the game do you want to work on, etc. Or how do you think a particular portion of it could be improved? Those are pretty common questions around, all sorts of different studios and different games. The trick is to sort of be confident in talking about your own work. Um, and the last questions here, they were around, Sports Interactive as a company. Each company interview will ask questions around the products they create. It's okay not to have played every game that's made by a company, particularly with companies that like have a high frequency of releases or release on a lot of different platforms. But I would say going into an interview, do be sure you've at least watched the studio's content on YouTube with some Let's Play videos, etc. And you have a pretty good level of familiarity with their output. Okay. Some studios might be interviewing you for a particular product, yeah, or a particular game. In our case, we make Football Manager. That's generally what we're doing. Or other companies might have an assortment or an array of different games. So you might be interviewing for a spot on a particular team that works across many of these games. So know your strengths. So this all sort of stems from your portfolio. Put forward your best work. You don't need the Marvel Cinematic Universe's worth of content. Okay, that's just too much. Keep it down to just your best 4 or 5 pieces of work. For artists and for programmers and for designers as well. You don't need to sort of throw up too much work. Just have enough that you're comfortable talking about. Be prepared to talk about that as well, and steer the conversation to talk about your best pieces of work. Um, having an academic portfolio is great, and it's good to, have personal projects as well. Academic projects, you can highlight game jams, mods, and coursework, but also big up areas that you've worked on as a solo dev or by yourself, because team projects are great, but you need to really highlight your own talents. Okay. And sometimes with team projects, it's kind of hard to see what an individual may have contributed or worked on, and it's much better to see that on individual projects. Um, Soft skills we're looking for here as well. So teamwork, communication, adaptability. You're going to get asked about, tell me about an occasion when something went wrong or a person was difficult to work with, and how did you resolve that? Because we're interested to see how you might react under pressure or how you might negotiate resolution. For me, a very big thing for graduate or entry level positions is communication. There's so much communication needs to happen, and hopefully, yeah, this is on what to include in your portfolio. So a lot of portfolios I get through will show the final product. I was recently reading a textbook on this as well. That this came up in with it's when Google first started hosting like code repos, like way back in the day before GitHub and stuff. And they had all these open source code repos. And the most common question was, how can I hide my code so people can only see it when it's ready? And that got me thinking of like the job interview process is we're really interested in seeing the process, not just the finished work. So don't hide your code, don't hide your drafts and sketches. It's the line work and the intermediate stages that we're interested in. We want to get a feel for how you work, how many hours did you put into a particular piece. And as much as we want to see, workflow, we do want to see completed projects, but the workflow is important, particularly in like for me, looking at GitHub repos of projects and portfolio pieces, sometimes it's just a single check-in of like, here's the finished thing. And I'd much rather see the GitHub version history of that, of like, where did it start from and how did you update it? How frequently did you update this? What were your commit messages like as well as another big one that I keep having this talk with some of our internal team members of like, fixed it is not a very good commit message. It needs to be a little bit more detailed. And if you could outline exactly what you fixed and how, that would be brilliant. So, with commit logs, etc., things like that, I like to see that build up over time because it gives me a bit of an idea of, you know, how does this person work? How frequently are they, submitting things? Did they use branches or streams at all to, can they use Git properly? Because this is part of the thing. I get so many CVs come through for entry level positions, and it's always like, I have GitHub experience, and then no one links their GitHub in there. And it's kind of like, I would love to see that. But yeah, as much as we want to see workflow, we do need to see completed projects, playable demos, finished models. And a key part of all this role is really communication as well. So being able to describe your workflow, explain your source code, what does your mechanic do differently? Communication is really key here. So make sure you explain the work in your portfolio. Don't just have static images or my bugbear is like when I get linked to a GitHub repo and there's a README markdown file that has remained unused. That is where you tell me how to download the code, how to build and compile, how to run the thing. It's the same on demonstrations of mechanics. If you've got any design videos that you've put up, narrate those. Yeah, go through and explain what's happening in there. You've got to make sure you explain the work in there. Um, as well, tailor your portfolio for the role. So if the studio is looking for a hard surface modeler and they primarily work creating, you know, natural forested environments, then cater to that. Don't go showing them urban stylized sci-fi props and stuff. I famously remember like a portfolio came through years ago when I was working on a boxing game, and we were doing a bunch of boxing real world characters, etc. And this portfolio came through of like weird like trees and plants that were alive and animate, and it was kind of like, this is great, but we're really looking for someone that can do humans, not trees that look like they might eat me, like the Triffid style stuff. So if you're applying as an animator for us, the example would be, football games, we have human bipeds that are animated. Yeah, not a quadruped. So if you've got any bipeds on your animation portfolio reel, then big those up, put them front and foremost. If you've got quadruped stuff like horses, etc., then maybe move that further back. It's still interesting to see, but maybe don't start with that. We're not going to do that. Is there a world polo tournament thing? Could you manage a polo team? That would be interesting. I don't know if I'd play that. But, align your experience with the job description. If you can do web development, but you're applying for a C# Unity position, don't send in a portfolio full of JS web applets. I frequently get that as well. People applying for what is a C# Unity position, and their portfolio starts off with a whole bunch of like web dev skills, and it's like not quite what I'm looking for, but it's not too far afield. So the interview is a point for you to ask questions. There's always this section of the interview where the interviewer will ask you if you have anything that you would like to say. Yeah, always have a question. Never, ever, ever leave that part blank or vacant. Even oh, you've covered what I wanted to ask. Great, that might be true, but always have a backup question. Okay. Always have something to throw out there about, studio culture or workflow. Do you use project management tool XYZ? You guys Jira, Team City? How do you guys communicate internally? Do you use Slack or is it all MS Teams? How often do you update the game engine that you use? Is it frequently? Do you have one that's set for a number of years? Ask about progression, things that might not have come up in the interview already. So, does the studio have a development plan in place for their various departments? How will I go from being hired as a junior to a mid-level to a senior? Is that mapped out? Can we talk about that? All stuff to raise at interview. That one's good because it shows that you're long-term interested in the company as well, and not just looking for like, I need a job right now. So asking those questions about, how do I progress through junior to more senior dev? How long does that usually take, etc. Really nice, simple question to ask at interview that usually goes a long way with the people doing the interview because they'll be like, ooh, we want to hire people not just for now, but we want to hire people for the long term. So yeah, show curiosity. Ask about tools and workflows and structure. Mentorship as well is a good thing to ask about. Like, will I be left alone, etc. Especially important with studios that work remotely as well. We're completely spread out across multiple different countries and time zones, etc. I've got two American chaps that will be coming online in about 45 minutes to an hour to chat to, so that's going to be kind of fun. But yeah, they're evaluating fit as well, right? So, what does success look like in this role? You're able to ask about that as well. Does this studio, does this job align with your expectations? Because, sure, the studio might make great games, but it might not be a great place to be as well for the long term. So, you've got to figure that out too. So, ask these questions about support, career growth. Okay. And there's red flags to watch for as well, like vague answers about crunch or unclear responsibilities, lack of diversity in the studio. Those things are all, to me personally, would be things I'd watch out for. I'd be like, oh, okay, they didn't answer that question very well about, oh, do you have a history of, crunch, or is there a toil system in place for if I work overtime, can I, get that time and accrue or arrears, whatever. Um, or about responsibilities, like is the role very definite, or could it be one of those roles that suddenly you've got extra tasks that came outside the scope of what you were actually hoping to be hired for? So, ask those questions and ask about the studio. Make sure you do ask these questions. There's also, oh, wait, where we go? There. Good old Gareth. So preparation steps. So make sure you know about a bit about the company and what other projects they have ongoing. What's their history? Why do you want to work there? These are all questions to be answered there. And it's not just because I need a job. Uh, from the question list, prepare some responses. So the questions that were up there before, the standard sort of interview questions, think about how you might prepare some responses for that and talk about the situation you're in. Oh, it was high pressure with looming deadlines. What tasks did you have? How did you set out to accomplish the tasks? What was the result? And, reflect on how things could have gone better. If it's a big, important interview, it's okay to practice these things, to sit down at your computer and just record yourself doing it. I know it's horrific to record yourself and look back at it. Everyone gets the heebie-jeebies with that. If you don't, you're a special kind of person. But just sit down and go through like, oh, someone might ask about this. How would I respond? How would I talk about this piece? And during the interview, be authentic. Authenticity is so important in interviews. We get that you're nervous. We get that that's fine. It's perfectly reasonable and understandable. Listen actively, engage with the interviewer. Make sure to look directly into your camera from time to time. I sometimes struggle with that because I have like a couple of screens set up and a camera in the middle. So if I'm looking at one screen, I'm not looking at the camera. But I did try that NVIDIA thing that makes your eyes look at the camera. Don't use that. That's really creepy. But make sure that you're an attentive listener. Engage with the interviewer as well. Um, you don't have to laugh at their jokes, but that helps. After the interview as well, send a quick thank you. Okay, this doesn't happen too often. It's surprisingly, but just send a quick, thanks for the interview because it really opens up a line of communication there, and it shows that you were serious about the role. And then after every interview, just reflect on what went well, what you'd improve. Really, tear down and be like, what didn't work, etc. Make some notes about how you feel after it. And then a couple of days later, have a look at those notes, okay, after you've calmed down and had a bit more time to reflect and see if those are all still valid as well. Okay. So immediately afterwards, make some notes and then take a couple of days to reflect on them. Because sometimes we have knee jerk reactions to things and they might just be a little bit over the top because it's so instant. Okay. Like, oh, I think we did really badly, etc. But, send a thoughtful thank you note. And that's also a point to ask for feedback as well. Okay. So don't ask for feedback straight away with a thank you note, but separate it out. Like send a thanks for the interview. Okay. Really nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And if you hear back and you got rejected from a role, don't take that rejection personally and always ask for feedback. Okay. It's the only way to sort of improve and get over it. Maybe you're making a mistake or you did something that you could improve upon. And the thing is, I've I've done, oh can't tell you how many interviews or tests I've done. Even in the testing process, if you don't make it to interview, ask for feedback. Okay. I think I had around about 400 or 500 applications for internship positions this year. And out of those 400 to 500, only 2 people emailed me for feedback on how they did on the technical test because they didn't make it through. And because there was only 2 of them, I was like, right, let's set up a 45-minute chat and I'll just go through the technical test with you and I'll take the time to help you out here because, you know, 498 people didn't respond. If all 498 other people responded too, I probably wouldn't have been able to take that time to go through the individual tests. But, ask. It's that, shy kids don't get sweets type of thing. Don't assume what the issue was as well. Don't assume that you know what went wrong. Ask, get feedback, take it on board, and see if you can work it into your next interview. Um, Build from every experience, and interviews are an iteration as well. You mightn't land your first interview or your fourth, but learn from them, adapt, and overcome, as the SAS would say. So just remember, be persistent. Okay. When I was lecturing, I get this thing where some students would be like, "Oh, I've applied for a summer internship." It's like, "Oh, cool, where?" And they'd be like, "Oh, one place." It's like that's not many. You've put all your eggs in one basket. There's a saying about that. Apply for lots of places, but be persistent as well. Don't take rejections personally. Be curious. So ask, about like what happened. Can I get some feedback, etc. And just keep creating as well. Keep working on portfolios in the meantime. Keep growing and developing. And thank you. This ends my TED talk. So are there any questions off the back of that?
Really, really insightful, Jamie. Thank you so much for that presentation. I think it's fascinating, especially hearing that sort of people haven't sort of asked for feedback. I mean, obviously everyone's trying to sort of get the most out of the interview process. No one's there to catch you out or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's fascinating. Out of curiosity, I mean, I suppose going back to sort of some of those questions that you can sort of ask in the interview process for
Mhm.
yourself. I think that's a really good opportunity there to you know demonstrate that you've actually sort of learned something from actually meeting these people sort of in person. So yeah, I think it's a really, really good opportunity there. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. Yeah, absolutely. Jordan's mentioned, even if you're feeling a little lost, it's better to ask for feedback and grow. Yeah, As,
What team do I support? Oh, I'm a Newcastle fan. I'm a Toon fan, me. Hence the Geordie accent. Um, Actually, CJ's got something in there saying, I'm not football aligned, but thanks for your insights. I would say you don't need to be football aligned to work here. You don't need to be a rabid football fan to work at Sports Interactive. It might help, but you don't have to, and I'm most of the time, we're not looking for football fans. We're looking for software engineers most of the time is the thing that I sort of say. Um, it's great. I mean, I've got some chaps that are more interested in wrestling and WWF and stuff like that than football, which is always an interesting conversation. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of studios that's the case. I worked on a Pony Friends game once upon a time as well. I'm not really interested in My Little Pony or anything like that, but it was a really, really fun studio to work at.
Fantastic. No, that's really good. You mentioned sort of at the earlier on in this session about sort of genres of interview. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, it's maybe speaking from personal experience here. I've had a lot of interviews where mainly in person, and then a couple that have been more remote. Um, do you have any sort of tips on how to manage both of those sort of different situations? They are quite different environments, aren't they? Is there a? I mean, maybe this isn't the case for you specifically, but is there a point where you would bring someone in person, or you know, What would you say about the differences between those two different environments?
Yeah, it depends. If we want someone to meet a range of people across the studio to get more of an idea of team fit, and again, this is for like a more senior role, you would bring them into the studio. You'd make sure the team were there that day, or the sort of key players that you have on that team. Because again, we're remote. We do have, our studio and people are in there, but some folk are up in Scotland and come down once a month. I myself travel in sort of once a month at least, for a couple of days. So yeah, we'd bring someone in if it was that important to meet them, get them around the studio, etc., get them to meet a range of people, engage feedback on that depending on the role. Um, In-person interviews, I'd always say dress casual, smart. It's this weird thing like shorts are okay culturally, for Australians, maybe not in the UK. And depends on the length of the shorts as well, really, because we get around with stubby shorts, which is an Aussie colloquialism no one will get. But jeans, t-shirt, etc. Dress smart, make sure it's clean, that sort of stuff. We're not a suit and tie industry, as it were. Um, and for interviews, I there's one of our interns we've got in at the moment. I continually give him a bit of stick for this. Is when we did the interview with him, he was framed behind him by two. He's a Norwich supporter, so there was two Norwich jerseys, a home and away jersey, hanging on the wall behind him. And it was an interview with myself and one of the other guys on his team, one of the other mid-level engineers. And we both just cracked up. We're just like, "You've put those shirts there for this interview, haven't you?" And he was like, "No, no, they're always there." So they're not always there. Come on, you're pulling our leg. Um, but having spoken to him for about a year now, those shirts are always there. So he was pretty genuine with that. But yeah, frame it nicely. If you've got a room you can sit in that is, free from interruptions, make sure you can at least do that. Blur your background, if you can, hide any incriminating evidence, etc., or put up one of those fancy team backgrounds. That'll usually get me to comment. I'm like, "Ooh, that's a fancy office," um, or at least make me change my background to the same one as well, just for a laugh, to be like, "Oh, we're in the same room." But I'm really childish at times like that. But sometimes it does put people at ease, which is good. Um, there was a question in the chat that I saw was from Jordan. Would it be better to be honest and say you haven't played a game that a studio is known for making, but you already get stuck in? Yes, but don't just say I've not played it. You would obviously, say I've watched many YouTube videos of it, gameplay of it, etc. I am familiar with it. I haven't played it myself, and that's fine because we do understand that if you're coming in as a graduate entry level position and you might not be you're looking for your first role in the industry, games can be expensive. Yeah, it could be a brand new game as well. It could have just released last month. We don't expect you to rush out and buy it because there's a risk there as well. Like if you don't get the job, you've purchased this game, it might not be your cup of tea. That's more than fine. I started out working in boxing games, doing like Don King's Prize Fighter and Rocky Legends and stuff. And that's not really a genre of game that I had played before ever working on it. And the same with Pony Friends, you know. Um, cool. There's another question somewhere in there. Any interview questions that someone has asked that you found to be particularly interesting? Ooh. Um, I've had questions based around my accent before, which is kind of fun. It's horrible when they get it wrong and they get the other country that sounds similar, or the other two countries that sound similar. Um, I'm trying to think. Technically, I had a really good one. There was, and this is one of the things that you never know who's interviewing you or what the background might be. And when I was doing boxing games, one of the things that I had to implement was a replay system for playing back the entirety of a fight. And how to capture a replay or an undo redo system in engineering terms is really interesting. There's many ways to skin a cat. And this person replied, and they had a game on their portfolio that was like a time travel game. Like you sort of played it out once, your character ran through and you went and stood on a button. And then you basically played the level again, but this time your ghost, like in a racing game, went and stood on the button as it previously done. You had to go and stand on another button, and then that would open a door. Then you'd play it back a third time. Two ghosts would run off and stand on the buttons, the door would open and you would run through to progress. And I was like, that's really cool, but how did you do the replay system on the ghosts? And this turned into more of a conversation around replay systems and technical requirements of those things and optimizations to it. And that ended up being what got that person the job as well, because they had such a good way of communicating and explaining what they'd done. And it was, it had nothing to do with football really at the time or any of the systems that we work on, but it just really sold me on that. And it was the same with my first job in the industry. I turned up with a CD with some work on. And I'd missed the library off the CD that was needed to get something to run properly. It was, yeah. But I did have a DS and I'd done some DS homebrew on there as well. And the thing that I'd done was actually like a free kick football flick kick thing. Top screen was the goal with some like, rope physics. And the bottom screen was the football. And this is all like really, you know, rough OpenGL type of stuff. And I just showed that to the guy that was interviewing me, and then we had a chat about that. And there was actually a bug in it as well. That it was a world space conversion issue that I managed to talk through with him, so that when I got back, I could then fix the bug the next time I was like iterating on that project. And that's what got me the job there, was my ability to sort of talk through that problem.
Fascinating stuff. It's a really, really good thing to be able to demonstrate in an interview, really. We've got a question here asking about best way to practice for games-related technical tests. What would you say? What would you say to that?
Um, there's places out there like HackerRank, LeetCode. There's also I love pronouncing this one because there's a correct way and a wrong way. The Project Euler questions as well. That's Euler, Euler. It's Project Euler. It's a series of short problem fizz buzz type questions. Um, Project Euler's all right. You can do most of them. They're pretty easy to pull apart, and then there's feedback. You can have a look on the forums after you've answered them and work out how you could have done it faster. Leet code is similar. I like practicing those things and then looking at like, can I be the fastest at this? That's my challenge to, can I be quicker than anybody else? So leet code's good that it shows you like a leaderboard. Or you just press it a couple of times until it gives you the right answer. So doing those things can help with preparing for technical tests, reading through textbooks. There's various like sources online of as well of like, I'm trying to do a graduate level technical test. What would I expect for, C++ versus C sharp, etc., and Unity? Each company is slightly different, but yeah, looking at LeetCode, HackerRank, those type of things, usually pretty good and gives you a bit of feedback about it. Don't use uh, AI to do these tests as well. Okay, I mean a lot of companies will state on their tests that they send out, please don't use AI, ChatGPT, etc., to answer these questions. It's really obvious when you do as well. Um, I've had a few come through where it's like, wow, that's a great answer. I couldn't type 600 words in a minute though and read the question. So yeah, don't do that. What's the
Very,
next one?
very good advice there. So, question about here from Ashley about whether you review portfolios before an interview, um, or look at them after. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
some
So
clarity on that would be good.
So I look at portfolios well before interview. I look at portfolios and CV and cover letter before even sending out the first invitation to a screening test, let alone our main technical test. Um, because that's going to give you like, okay, I'll read through the CV. Okay, that's the back of the packet for like what E numbers does this person contain, etc. So it's like, oh, you studied here, you studied this and that. It gives me an idea. Then I look at the cover letter, and it might be like, oh, okay, this is why you want to work for us. This is what you're interested in. And then I'll look at the portfolio and I'll see like what projects have you worked on? Is it of interest? If it is, that's when I'll be like, right, you're going in the screening test pile. I'm going to send you out a quick screening test to make sure that you cut the mustard there. And if you get through the screening test, then we'll send you on to the main technical test as well. Our testing process, our screening test is like a 10-minute long, 15 multiple choice questions. And our main technical test for us is a 45 minutes long with 10 short answer questions. Testing processes like that shouldn't take, I'm not a fan of the hey, here's something to go and do for a week or 2 weeks, etc., to, complete this task. I'm like, people have lives outside of applying for work, etc. So I don't like doing that to folk. Um, so yeah, ours is a quick 45 minutes. So the whole process, really, if you sat down and did it all at once, could take an hour. And then we do like a technical interview, which is a walkthrough of your technical test and some technical questions around portfolio and CV. But I always look at portfolios well before even sending out an invitation to a test. Um, yeah, just to gives you the idea of like, is this person any good?
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And finally, here we've got a question about sort of formatting for portfolios. This person uses ArtStation,
Mhm.
but it's disappeared. Sorry, bear with me. um, uses ArtStation for situations where they're applying for multiple jobs. Yeah, and how to sort of personalize each one of those applications. I guess that's quite challenging, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be like, but if you use ArtStation as a base, I'm sure you can set up like multiple art stations to link to for like, this is my one for, characters, this is my one for environments, etc., and try and, separate them like that. You could use your own personal web pages and link to your ArtStation account. I'm sure there's ways of doing that. I don't want to say like use a Wix page, but I just personally I don't like Wix as a format. Every time I see one of those Wix pages, I'm like, oh, that's so ugly. Um, and it seems no matter what you do with it, they all look the same as well. For engineers, I'd recommend looking at like GitHub IO pages, that type of thing, setting it all up so your project work, your source code is on GitHub, your web page is on GitHub, it's all in one place. ArtStation's fantastic. I'm trying to think of what the other one is. It's not, is it Sketchfab? Um, I know this Carbon Made was all right for setting up different art portfolios, but that requires a subscription to pay for. Sketchfab for 3D models. Thanks, CJ. Yeah, Sketchfab's great. You can separate Sketchfab out into, different sections, etc., or link to it from a web page. Sketchfab's particularly useful and popular in the industry as well because it allows us to, look at wireframe of the model, look at the way you've done your textures, etc., and all that. So we can go through and on their 3D visualizer enable and disable various parts of the lighting model configuration, etc., to kind of see everything in that 3D render, which is really great. Instead of just like, here's a picture of it, you can scan it around and zoom in and have a look at stuff on there. So yeah, um, but yeah, it does take a bit of time if you're applying for multiple jobs to set up different portfolio sites. But hopefully, there's not as many different job categories as as you'd expect. So maybe one or two portfolio sites would probably be enough.
Yeah, definitely being able to sort of group them by sort of genre makes
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense there. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Given that you've done an awful lot of these interviews over the years, have you noticed any sort of either really positive trends changing, or actually really negative trends with how things have been sort of progressing over the last couple of years from applicants? Is there something that you've started to notice? Oh, lots of people doing this. They shouldn't be doing this, or vice versa, kind of thing.
I was going to say there's a little bit from column A and column B in terms of things that are good, things that are bad. So 5 years ago during COVID, anytime I would go to interview someone, it would always be a case of, could you please turn your camera on? Or I don't have a camera. And it's like, this is not off to a great start. Like, yes, it's uncomfortable seeing yourself on screen, but you should make sure that these things work as the microphone cut out exactly at the right time to demonstrate. I've got two microphones. I know this one, there seems to be a problem with my headset driver, which is annoying. Um, but I've got another microphone, so it's fine. So yeah, the camera thing's now better. People are more, used to having cameras on and doing this sort of stuff and more set up for it. So that's fantastic. Um, a negative thing sometimes is there's a couple of universities that, and it's great that they do this. This has both got a good and bad. They set up assignments for students. So it's like, this assignment is a portfolio piece and the students put it on their portfolio. And then I get 25 applications from that particular university, and I get pretty much 25 copies of the very, very similar portfolio, where it's like, oh, another Mario looking game. No, I've seen this one before. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh, cool. And then the 20th time I saw it, I was kind of like, it's not as good as so it's that of like, yes, it's great to have these everything's a portfolio piece, because it does help and encourage students to build portfolios, but at the same time, it'd be nice to have some more versatility in the types of projects, and just to encourage everyone to make your own personal portfolio. Don't just have your academic coursework on there, have your own interests on there as well, because sometimes those are not really aligned with what you get to do for, you know, university projects, etc. I don't think I've seen anything else too negative in there. I keep harping on at people to, make sure you use your README Markdown files on GitHub for engineers. Please, please, please do that, because there's nothing worse than here's my GitHub and it's just a link to an empty, repository with an empty README file. The other one that's really bad is if you're going to put any links in your portfolio, links to GitHub, links to any website, etc., open it in an anonymous browser window and check that the link works. If it works there, then it's fine, because sometimes you'll need to sign in, or you might need like to set permissions to allow someone to view that repository. And if you haven't got them set, then the person that clicks on the link can't see it, and you've stumbled at that first hurdle. And it's just like, oh, come on, you could have fixed this so quickly. I still see that. I had someone submit an application. It was the first application I looked at as well. And I was like, oh, I hope this year is going to be good for applications. Let's not stumble at the first hurdle. And they were like, they'd made a website that they sent me the link for on their cover letter, but that was a local URL 127.0.0.1. And I was like, that's like keeping in my documents folder. I'm like, that's not going to work. It's like, that's the first link I saw. I was like, oh no. Really unfortunate, but they had a couple other things that worked, but it's just that first one left a lasting impression.
Oh, that's really, 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 really helpful. Yeah, I don't suppose you any sort of more positive trends at all, things that you are starting to notice, that you're sort of pleased are sort of happening in terms of those trends.
Positive trends, diversity is on the rise. That's cool. I've had a lot more diverse applications coming through from UK universities. Um, yeah, that's been really good to see and really cool. Especially when we get a couple of studio visits for different colleges and different universities and stuff coming through, and the diversity of students they've had has been fantastic to see as well. So I always get a kick out of that. So that's a good upward trend. Yeah, people are dressing better. That's good.
Fantastic, and supporting a variety of teams, I suppose.
Yeah, it's usually the question that comes in is, what team do you support, etc. And it comes up in conversation, quite a bit, but it's always quite fun. If you do a walkthrough of our studio, we all have hanging on the backs of our chairs the once you pass your probation, you get it anyway, the jersey for the team you support. So there's a lot of football jerseys. It's always fun to go through and see like who's got the oldest top, because the number on the back is the year that you signed up. So there's a couple of 98s, 99s, etc. in there. I'm always surprised there's a Motherwell supporter in the studio. There's always one. There's a Dundee United as well, which is kind of fun. There's too many Celtics and not enough Rangers, I'd say. There's only about 4 Newcastle fans. Far too many people support Arsenal and Man U. What else? There's always surprises. There's a couple of cricket jerseys. There's a couple of NHL jerseys in there as well for people that don't follow football. They'll choose to put a cricket jersey on there, or else they'll get the SI jersey hanging on the back of their chair as well. So, yeah, it's all fun.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. It's been really, really interesting having you talk to us today. Really appreciate it. I've had some fantastic questions from the chat as well. So thanks to everyone who's joined us this afternoon. Yeah, I think we'll draw to a close